Hi, Sanjeev.
Hi, Anton. Nice to
Great.
see you.
Nice to see you too today. I'm very curious to talk about AI in the context of software development. You have experience there. I believe you have a lot to share.
Yeah, I try my best. So, yeah, doing AI in software development for quite some time. So, definitely have some of my good and nice and not so nice experiences. A lot to definitely chat about.
Perfect. I would love to hear all of those. Sharing experience from the, let's say, bad things that we experience and also good stuff. I think it's super valuable. Just speaking in terms of AI usage and AI value for software engineering, I believe we have a couple areas. And maybe just one generic thought that I have, before we actually start developing something, we have to hire software engineering team, right?
Yeah, definitely. So engineers are the most important piece in that puzzle. So you still need people, and yes, we talk about replacing engineers for quite some time, right? So there is a big chunk of people and audience, or like the narrative is that okay, now we don't need many software engineers. It's going to be completely replaced, but what in the last couple of years, we already know that that's not true. So software engineers still are in demand. There are still, if from my experience, I think there is more need of software engineers than less, because technically you can do more things. So my experience is not replacing, but like software engineers doing more. So I see from that perspective.
It's a good point. We might need more software engineers. Actually, I do agree to that. And just making a small step back and talking about the recruiting process for engineering team. Just in general, do you feel that any kind of AI literacy is important skill for a software engineer? Should it be evaluated during the interview, or would you say, no, we should better focus on the domain expertise, or is it a combination, or is it different depending on the roles? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, very interesting question, right? So I have been also hiring recently for a couple of roles over a few months, and of course, I think AI literacy. You already touched that important topic, the AI literacy, and it's not just for software engineers, right? So be it if you are on the other end of hiring, like be HR people or operations or any kind of role. So I think it's very important that everybody as an organization itself has that foundation level of literacy in the first place. And second, in why it's important, the AI literacy is like the hiring has become complicated. Let's be honest, right? So if you read the resume now, like all the resume looks same. Why? Because they go through the job description, give it to LLM that okay, tailor my resume to these job descriptions, and it has become like quite significantly hard to really understand who is that candidate, right? So for me, it's more important to know that candidate from the personal side, like okay, what's the mindset, what's the character, and to complete your question, of course. I directly ask them like, okay, how do you use AI tools, or how does your day-to-day work look like? And that has to be reflected in the hiring process too, because in the real world, when let's say you hire them and then most of the time they will work with the AI tools and not asking or like not integrating that in your hiring process, I think is a big disadvantage. So I'll be happy like if I'll be actually more skeptical when someone say, okay, I don't like AI or I don't use AI tools. So, but if someone says, because that's the real job, the job and the interview process or the hiring process needs to align. So that's my experience so far. So it should be that way.
I see. So probably the first validation step is to check the quality of the CV. It speaks for itself. Okay, candidates, software engineering candidates, they used AI for this different use case. I believe making or refining your CV, it's not their everyday job. So this is a side task that they make. And on the other side, I was thinking a little bit about the hiring process, about the skills evaluation, and I'm just asking myself a question: could we potentially hire a software engineer without any AI literacy evaluation? Would you do this, or?
I mean, like, we are a tech company, right? So mostly I work with the tech product. So I think, like, for our case, like, it doesn't make that sense. Like, we are a tech company. If you are a product company, or if you are selling a tech related services, I think you have to kind of evaluate that kind of literacy. And it also depends on the foundation, right? So what kind of culture do you have in your existing team? And let's say if you are very like if your existing team is very pro AI, and like they are like really sipping and every day like spending most of the time with the AI, and then if you bring someone in who is really not into that kind of operating model, then it would be a like kind of conflict as in, like, it's always, I prefer more like a balanced environment. So I like to have a mix of like pro AI, like who are really like, okay, it's AI is game changing, it has to be AI, let's do only AI. And there are people like also who are slightly skeptical, okay, AI is just it's not just for everything. So try to think about like, okay, what kind of culture or like team do you have, and what is that person gonna reflect, or like what's your expectations on that. So it all start actually, like, if we think the hiring, like it's the same as before AI. Nothing had changed, right? It depends on the DNA of your team. It depends on the culture of your organization, what kind of team you want. And for example, for us, like, we hire at early stages mostly product engineers, like really who not just ship things but help us to ship the right things. We try to eliminate the gap as much as possible, so they are as close to customers as possible. And what happens is, like, when you talk to customers or when you experience their problems firsthand, you have to at times, a lot of times, quickly iterate, quickly experiment, build something faster, like not like a full-fledged thing. And for that reason, I want people in my team who can really build those prototypes, or like who can really experiment things faster. And it also depends on the maturity of the organization, right? For example, if you're a big tech, like Google, Facebook, Meta, or Twitter, then you have a different story. But I think, like, evaluating AI literacy as in, like, I don't focus more on the tools, but mostly like the psychological side. What does AI mean to that person, right? So the responsible AI. It's not just like now giving everything to the tools or something, but responsible means thinking about security, compliance, like, because running a company or business is completely different than asking, okay, hey, I want to go to Paris or like some place, and then planning a trip, right? So you need someone not just using a tool but using it responsibly, that making sure the data is well protected. So, and that all comes through the AI literacy you mentioned. Without it, like, if you don't have that foundation, it's going to be hard. And that's I think also the big reason that I also like to ask you the same question. Why do you think, like, the businesses like are complaining, so many businesses are complaining that they're not getting the best ROI from the AI investments, right? And I think that could be one reason, because they didn't fix the foundation first. But what's your experience? Have you seen that too?
Yeah, we covered a couple points. So answering your very last question about the high rate of failures of AI initiatives, I think the very first problem is the exceeded expectations in the first place. So for example, in the last year, there was a study to actually measure how AI helps software engineers becoming more effective in their job. Before executing the task with the help of AI, engineers thought that they would be 24% more efficient with AI. After they completed the task with AI, they thought they would be more efficient. They were actually around 20% more efficient. Fact is, they got 19% slower using AI. We should say, and it was a complete shock, it was a shocking result also for people who actually ran and invented this study. The very first expectation was 2 times faster. Okay, use AI and you will be 2 times faster.
Yeah.
But we see the fact, 19% slower. So where does it come from? In general, I think it is hard to speak about AI at the top level, because we have a complex world, we have complex use cases, and even in our current focus point, which is software engineering team, we have different seniority levels. And for senior engineers, the benefit of AI seemed to be lower in their senior tasks than for junior tasks, for example. So imagine we have a mature technical solution, we have domain experts, and they know a lot of areas in this technical universe, how the things are related. And then comes AI into game. We constantly hear that AI solutions from bigger players, OpenAI, Google, and so on, so very mature models, that they are superficial, that they could help pretty much everywhere. So this is kind of the wording or the information that we hear. But in practice, when the senior software engineers are working on their tasks and then get support from AI, they also have to process this outcome from AI, and very often they get very generic advices that they still have to go through, but they did not bring them closer to their goal. And I guess this is a real challenge to understand when to use AI and when not, and to which extent. So this is probably one of the important skills that I would try to evaluate during the recruiting process. In terms of tools themselves, I think that would be less value for me personally. So I guess domain expertise and maybe developed experienced feeling of how to use, just as you said, Sanjeev, how to use those AI tools, when to use them. It should also fit to the team culture.
Yeah, definitely, very interesting. Yeah, I think for me, I at least now I am more into the already into the area where I don't think that when not to use AI, because I think it would be super difficult to think and organize from that perspective. I'm still that's why pushing quoting that at least the 50% of the traffic when not to use AI is let's quote this, but how to best use AI, and how to work on building the really AI native teams, not just like a buzzword, right? For example, now every software product is an AI powered product. Every company is a AI native companies. But if you think what AI has done, from the cognitive load perspective. Now imagine when we started in around 2009, right? So I was happy working 8 hours doing just completing 1 or 2 small tickets or tasks, and I was doing great. And now I do for example 5-6 tasks per day, but it feels it's not enough. We always complain about we don't have time for technical depth, we don't have time for good improvements, we always complain, there is always a deadline. But now we are doing things much faster. A task taking a day, 8 hours, now you can do it in 2 hours most probably. And honestly, like if you think like now, we should be spending that 6 hours in the good thing, like to really plan, improve, and think about architecture, system, technical depth, business, how we can link this to the overall business goals. But we are not doing. What we're doing is like in that 6 hours that we saved for that one task, we are bringing new 3 or 4 more tasks, and suddenly I think the AI fatigue is like kind of hitting everybody. And that's not just software engineers, right? It's all the people have the psychological insecurity in the first place. Oh, now there are all the tools, how do I keep up? So doing your job is not enough. Now you need to learn so many different tools and so on to adapt. And what's your take on this, like the whole AI thing, like kind of creating that stress or fatigue among the people, not just software engineer or in general?
I think particular tools are not important. Fact is, we have very high pace. We have a fast dynamics in the development of different tools. So there we have two extremes: either to try to learn pretty much every new tool and just try to make the best tooling choice. And second is when we implement something. So this is in terms of software engineering. We have here two moduses. One mode is research modus, and the other one is implementation modus. As simple as that. So if you are doing research for the new task, then of course it makes sense to focus on studying the new tools, making the choice, and that's it. And then once coming to implementation, you just take this tool and well, my gut feeling is that we might not really get a tool that would be 100 times more efficient than whatever we have currently on the market. If we would ever get this one, okay, that would be probably an extreme case, like we experienced with ChatGPT. That was really an extreme case that that kind of paused the universe, where companies had to really study this and kind of think how to integrate this faster. So of course, those cases are also worth attention, but those are rather rare. And coming back to the tools themselves, what they mean for me, I guess this is just a part of the mindset, how we approach our tasks. And my gut feeling is that if you kind of try to understand the, so I'm now again inclined to this recruiting process, if you try to evaluate the competency of a potential colleague, I guess it just goes without saying that that you would automatically get a feeling how they are using those AI tools. So for example, they would say, all right, if for the new kind of very well scoped smaller tasks, we use AI there, we evaluate there, we kind of we had our studies, we had our experience before AI tools, we kind of had 10 of similar tasks in our experience. So we can use AI tool for that and being more effective evaluating the outcome if those are small. So this is just one of example how I could evaluate this, and I don't even think that I would make a concrete devoted AI literacy questionnaire. No. It makes little sense because as again, we live in a complex environment, and software engineering teams, they should be compliant to the particular company regulations. And fact is, some companies are slower in terms of digitalization, AI first thinking, and it means they could have just prohibited the usage of some tools for a while, and then if the engineer would look for a new job, of course, he could not use it in his professional life. So that's where this difference could come up in terms of AI literacy. But practically, I do believe that if inside your organization, if you have a very well settled processes in terms of onboarding into your AI mindset, into your tooling, I guess software engineering itself is basically about using some tools and moreover going deeper at the API level and so. So I believe a good engineer would grasp all this pretty much fast.
Yeah, that's what my observation too, right? So they have to use AI as a tool, right? So in the end, what is important is like what problems you're solving, how well you're solving, and how your work is contributing to the overall um, business goal, right? And AI is just a tool. If it can, if you can do something better that you cannot do without AI, if you can do that with AI, then go for it. So treating it like a tool is, I think, the best approach. And there will always be a new tools, right? So there will always be development, and but I think I like that mindset, and that's what I also encourage everybody. Like, okay, treat AI as a tool, nothing less. In the end, like the focus is always about delivering value and contributing to the bigger pictures, right?
Absolutely. So maybe the question is, how did it happen that we started developing more features? Is it the obvious expectation now that we have, let me call them a little bit more powerful tools for development? So does it come from there that we as a development team can now deliver more? Or this is kind of a proactive thing that we well, of course, in the technical world, we like sometimes to show our technical skills. So we can say, okay, we're now so good that we could deliver even more. Where does it come from?
I think it actually like it's one of those things, right? So putting a blame on the AI for different reasons. For example, like a lot of companies now, like doing this job cut and everything, they say it's because of AI, and that has become a favorite narrative for at least for the public. And I think in software engineering, it's also the same. So it's not AI what led to the feature factory, right? I call it the feature factory, where you are like producing features like a factory. And in my experience, I think like that was existing long before. So what happened was like we always treated like software engineers slightly a little far away from the business unit. So they became like really very obsessed about the how part. So how do I build it? They never get clarity on why they are building certain features. And there were managers, there are different layers, and I operated in that mode for so long, right? So I never understood for a long time, like, okay, the feature that I'm pushing or releasing, like how it's going to impact the overall business numbers, like which KPI does it really going to impact. And uh, and the engineering, or like in general, like tech became like a producing machines. And then we started having like, okay, giving the more responsibility on what to build to the product. We bring the product unit, and then there is a technology unit, product unit, and then there is a business unit. And so there is always a gap. So the softwares were like more focused on the outputs, so they were not very much into like delivering outcomes, but they were judged or evaluated based on like, okay, your performance is like, okay, more on how many features you completed, or even in some organizations, how many lines of code you pushed, or how many commits that get merged. So it was long before. So how we used to do the product or software development was kind of like in that stage where it started like to bring everything together, product and tech and the business coming together, and the concept of product engineers and everything was slowly happening. And then the AI thing actually blow everything up, right? And then now we all think it's because of AI that we are sipping like hundreds features or more features, but it's not. If you look back to your organization and look back to your leadership, you will find out it's not AI. That's your culture. That's how you think about product. That's how you communicate, or like there is a big gap between like how you operate as a business unit and the technical product unit. And then now AI became a favorite thing. So And like, because just because you have a tools doesn't mean that you can literally ship many things, right? So it's existing problems now with AI that I think it's even get hidden behind other fake narratives and observations. That's what I think. It was there always, and now it's time to really close the gap, bring that customers and that business to close to product technology, and then I think you start learning from it. And then I think you will focus more on building the right things and very less focus on building things. So it's not just about building things, but it should be about building the right thing, right?
As always been. That
Yeah.
never changed, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand what kind of areas became cheaper to do, or if I would rephrase it, what AI tooling made cheaper and what it made more expensive in terms of software engineering.
Yeah.
Probably cheaper is to do just independent feature that would require less of integration, more or less. So to about 90% of, let me call it, independence rate in compared to existing code. And what became more expensive is the integration process, I guess technical depth. This is, and also, if we just make step aside before thinking, okay, what became cheaper and more expensive, if we as a product owners or technical leaders who take responsibility for the whole technical solution, I guess we have a gut feeling that the more we use AI, the more the faster we develop, the more technical depth do we have. Do you have such a feeling or not?
I think like technical depth is one thing that we always talk for ages, and it will always be there, right? So, and technical depth is not inherently or necessarily bad, right? It will happen because let's be realistic, right? So in 2026, we are building products, we are building software, and the speed we are, because we cannot wait for 2 months to ship something, right? Like in the past, you have like 4 sprints or like do monthly releases or something. It's not going to happen because the learning, the speed and the feedback is like you are going to kill that loop in that approach. So with that speed, you are making decisions every day, and you have to, as a leaders, as a technical leaders, or any kind of leaders, or like any even managers, and everybody now have to make decisions every day so fast, and you are not going to make all the right decisions for sure. You have to accept that, and that will lead to the technical depth for sure. What is missing is like there is a big translation gap. So when, for example, a CTO or like VP engineering, head of engineering come to CFO or like talk to COO or like this, even the CEO, and then try to explain that, oh, we have a technical debt, we need like, okay, 2 months to refactor this. But like they're not able to like communicate that in a way that how it really means to the business. Like, what does that mean? Like, okay, what if you refactor, for example, spend that two months? What is it going to be like? Okay, reduce the customer churn, or like does it help with the onboarding? Is it going to impact on the revenue or something? So I never learned that way. That okay, I also thought, okay, I will just talk code, or like I'll just talk technical. And then for the long time, even as like a senior leader, like when I talk to this other executive leadership team, and that tech debt become like, okay, they think but like, okay, why, right? So that's one thing. The decisions will lead to a lot of tech debt. What is important is like you have to make that trade-offs like consciously, strategically, right? So I am doing this, okay, I will skip this writing test, for example, writing end-to-end test for this module, or like, because I know like, okay, I have to do the demo next week or like in a week, and then I know like in 2 weeks I will spend some time to come back and fill that gap. What happens is like we say we will do it later, but we will not really come back and look at this ever. So it all depends from the leadership or anybody, like even software engineers, taking that accountability and ownership that, okay, I want this feature, okay, I will make some decisions you communicate well, and you know, like, okay, why do you do this at the decision at this stage, and you will come back. And so the leadership then, like, okay, translate that technical depth conversation into the business voice, so that they can say that, okay, if we don't do this, like, we're losing a lot of customers in onboarding or churn and something. And then it's a sweet spot, right? So, but it will always be like there, how we treat that technical depth for our strategic advantage is the most important aspect, I would say.
I believe here we also have two moduses in terms of a healthy balance between speed and quality of our solution. One modus is startup modus, which means winning a new customer today is much more important than pretty much anything else.
Yeah, definitely.
So the startup modus, number one, and then scaling modus, or for more established organizations who kind of have stable clients base, they have much more things in the control. I believe for them quality could become more important, so that the solution, probably they already have mature technical solution, so that it could still be scalable. Because we see two extremes here. In the first case, if the startup says, you know what, customers are great, but still the most important thing for us is code quality. That's why we would take some other weeks or months, and by doing that probably would lose some customers, which is super bad. And on the other side, for the bigger organizations, if they would say, we still have the startup mindset, we want to, we are aggressive in terms of acquiring new customers, and would still ignore the code quality, I guess they, by doing this, the technical solution can come to the state when implementing the new feature would become exponentially more expensive. So this is probably, let's say, at this.
I always like, that's why, like, give the example, right? So there is like speed, there is cost, and then there is a quality. So you will not be able to get all three of it. So if you want to be fast, you might lose on quality, or like this. So this three triangle: speed, quality, and the cost. So you can, in the best case, have two. So you can get fast and probably decent quality, or like then compromise on the speed. Or if you want like something very top quality and very fast, then like it's going to cost you like, okay, super high, because you need probably double this number of people or something, right? So that's why, like you said, in the early stage, you're in the builder mode. You need to the important thing is learning fast, because you don't know what exactly you're building, and you might be changing it quite fast. So in the beginning, like, if you think about, I will architect, I did the same mistake, for example, in one of the CTO co-founder. I was a co-founder CTO in that B2C startup, and especially the engineering turned out to be really the cost center. We thought that we will be the next TikTok, and then we plan and build. I architected mostly everything, thinking about that tomorrow we'll have millions of users, and build that complex stuff, but we never reach even 10,000 users, right? So it's always about like appreciating and understanding where you are, and then like documenting everything. Okay, what are the trade-offs, what are the corners that you caught, because it will come back to you if you don't really. The problem is, like, it's not about like, okay, going from one stage to other, but we do decisions and completely forget about it, right? In the early days, it's fine, okay, compromise a little bit on quality, and then you start having regular customers. You're in the scale-up phase. The more is like reliability is important. You cannot really release something and then every day something is broken. That's not going to work. So you need to invest more on like proper testing infrastructure, proper gatekeepings, and no matter with the feature flags and whatever. So it's all about like basically understanding from that builder to scaler to scale up, right? So, and I think that's where I think we kind of like, we think startup means like, okay, you don't care that much, and then we on the other side we think, okay, you are a big tech or corporates, that means, okay, you have everything established and you are super slow. But there is a trend, or like a lot of people want to run big corporation with the startup DNA, right? And so it's in the end, like, you need to find the right mindset, right people, and then like to operate at different levels. And also like I just want to add a point there. What happens is, like, especially in the tech, usually the startup, like, you hire somebody like probably at early stage, then you give them a CTO title and so on, and then suddenly, like, okay, you start scaling, and a lot of those persons are very builders, so they are not good with the strategy, they are not good with the business outcomes and so on. And when you start scaling, you that person doesn't develop into that area, because a lot of times, like, you might see, if you work with a startup, like, they, for the founding engineer, they have given like CTO title, and it's easy to give, like, in the start everybody are excited and so on. So if that person doesn't evolve over time, and then you are going to have a problem at that scaling step, or like in the scale up phase, where you need different kind of expertise, right? So it's always like to keep that in mind where you are operating. Like you said, you are in this early stage versus like mature organization, and what matters to you, right?
I believe in this context, probably AI tooling might help us to develop from founding engineers towards real CTOs of bigger organizations. I guess this is just one of the use cases where probably people could benefit from those AI tools. If they would say, all right, we are now bigger, and what are my responsibilities? How should I change? And stuff like this. So maybe they could benefit from those tooling. And by the way, I think in general, people say that they tend to benefit from AI tools more in the areas where they have less competencies.
Yep, exactly.
So that was just one of the cases. Speaking about software development itself, I still feel like we have something, or at least this is my gut feeling, that something changed. Some risks, they are getting postponed, or some, let me say, things that need additional attention, they are getting postponed if we ship something sooner, if we ship something very fast. I can give an example. So for example, we wanted to just try out with some solution, developing some cloud solution, and for the website or front end part, we completely used vibe coding. So in the end, we had a file with 7,000 lines of code. During development, it was absolutely not a problem, because we said, okay, this job we give completely to AI tool. And then we thought we don't even want to refactor it, because if the AI tool can understand what it generated in the best way, just by reading one file, and maybe it would be less of computation under the hood for this tool to deduce or extend this functionality, then it would be great. What happens after some time, the tools that we used, they said, okay, those files are too big for us. So they just created the very big file and said, okay, all right, you're done. So this kind of situation, when we could really, I'm not saying ship, this we don't ship to our clients. We, of course, want to guarantee some quality. It was more for prototyping. So if we want to ship faster, I believe this kind of prototyping, or I don't know how to call those code parts, maybe not the nicest code parts in terms of the best practices that we know. And if we bring this to our technical solution, probably by doing this, we know that we have to come back. We will have to come back at some point there. So coming back to my example, when the front-end engineers had a look at this, they were shocked, really said they didn't know how to deal, if they should refactor, or so basically maybe it would have been easier for them just to drop it and start from scratch.
Yeah.
So how many things should or could potentially appear with this fast pace that we just have to drop and develop from scratch. Have you ever experienced something like that, or how is it for you typically?
For me, it's very like straightforward, right? So I think that the whole how we end up in this situation is this whole blowing of the vibe coding thing, right? So especially like what happened was like, so a lot of non-technical founders and like who have ideas for, I think this is the best time, to be honest, to build anything or to realize your idea or to give a life to it. And there was a time where we like really like everybody talk about vibe coding, and the thing is like, so yes, you understand the problem, or maybe you can describe like in general, like okay, what you are expecting, and then you start that, like the first results are like look impressive, right? We just like saying, okay, make me a website with these features and these features and so on, because and you haven't seen that in the, you don't come from technical background, you haven't worked with complex software systems, so it looks like magic, right? So psychological, and then everybody were vibing. But for me, it's very important that vibe coding, or like whatever we call it, like it's okay for prototyping, experimenting. So for example, you need some one hands off kind of tools or solutions you like to, it could be very internal, it could be even to do demos and so on. But for the regular like product, like it's, we still have non-negotiable rules like on the architecture systems, and the AI is only good as we give the context, right? So we need to kind of guide it in a way, and that's where I think I am more like liking also in terms of developing feature more. There are like people who don't like this spec-driven development, right? Who like to first create specifications like we did in the past with this Jira tickets and so on. So engineers never liked that. But for me, like I think at least if you spend time in the first in creating those proper specs, so we all like start like 90% of the time, most of the, with the tools, you have to spend 90% of your time on the planning mode, and then only you get the 110, 20, 100, 200% output in that remaining 10% if you spend 90% on the plan mode. As software engineers, as a technical people, we don't like to talk about specifications. We don't like the documenting thing. And like you said, so that for that reasons, like you have to start somewhere. Like you cannot just have like, okay, every like having a complete freedom, but like a certain standards, right? So creating a lot of, for example, like in our regular projects, we have like probably at least minimum 50 rules file depending on projects and so on, where it's clearly, even with that strict rule set, like the AI outputs like will sometimes like will ignore it, but at least like control works for 90% of the cases, be it like creating files, be it modeling a database, be it like documenting a code, be it following it. And then you have to map that with the proper tooling, like very much CI/CD automations, everything as automated as possible from the beginning. And then I think you will kind of have better results. So for a regular thing, I would not like really like start anything without having a proper spec for a feature. Like you have a spec, and that's why like there are this set of tools now kind of getting popular. They call it spec driven development. I also come from very test driven development, right? So I am a very TDD biased person. So if you ask me about test driven development, then I might have like a little biased or like a little edge towards the test driven development. And I always, why the AI works for me better, because I start with test. I follow the strict test driven development, and none of the code really like just like I'm describing that, okay, just give me a code. I ask to like, okay, start with a test. The test will automatically create that kind of specification, and by the time you have a code, like you already have a good base of like quality. And my understanding is if I get the 70% satisfactory result, I'm okay with it. I'm not running with AI for the perfection. Like if you are going for like, okay, 90%, 100% perfect results, you will just burn out yourself. So spend time in the plan mode more, 90%, 80% there, and it's very much drive your development through test. Without test, like be it integration test, automated test, end-to-end test, And I prefer TDD because I mostly start thinking from behavior, so like from the product feature behavior, and then I get the results. And we always have like this 40, 50 rules files for different kind of project, different kind of tech stacks and so on, which clearly kind of define that, okay, like be it cloud or Cursor or whatever tools you use, and it get integrated as a part of all the repos, that when you clone or start working on the project, it gets automatically with you, and you can add your personal touch a little bit here and there, and that give you a good balance. I think it's not a perfect results, but at least you can control what's coming in, and your code reviews and everything gets easier. Or even like after that then do some pair programming, have like a couple of people together, and you get the best result. But without like just like a proper like operating model, you're not going to like get the consistent and predictable results, right? So you will not always get, because if 5 people work with the tools in a 5 different ways, and you get different results for the same thing. If I ask my Cursor or my cloud to do certain things versus like somebody else, we get a different results, because I guide through the test. I have very well documented rules, what to do, what not to do, and like very explicit, very like, even with that, like, and then I get like 70-75% good results, decent results that can ship. And then with the review and so on, I think you can have that decent, okay level at least.
In terms of testing code and production code, should people or software engineering teams treat those technical solution passes differently or not?
They have to, like, testing is also part of software engineering to me. So I never liked the approach where we have like this separate QA engineers or like QA departments and team. And it makes sense, for example, if you're doing the hardware, and then if you have like this different compliance or like this regulation. But in terms of software, you are an engineer, you're building, you're shipping something, so it's your job to write the test. And you can always get help in there. And now is the best time, for example, right, with the AI tools. I think like you can, the 2 things that I never enjoyed in the past was documentation.
Yeah.
And test I like, because I come from very test-driven development. So the only thing I like about coding is writing tests mostly. That's the most satisfactory thing. But the documentation, right? So it was like not a like, oh, I have to document this again. But now, like, I think like AI is really good at least understanding the code base and creating those documents, understanding the features, and combine that with your plans and with this spec mode, and then I think you get the better results. So that's my experience, I think. So it has to be an engineering job. Don't separate it.
I see. Okay, engineering job, don't separate it. Maybe I would try to rephrase it a little bit in terms of mindset. Do tests become more important or after introduction of AI tools, or it's pretty much the same as it was before, really a part of the code base? It's just
it's very subjective, right? So I think people can have different opinions. For me, like with AI tools, it is probably more important than less. Of course, like test has always been super important, and I think with AI now, like it's even more important, because you don't know like what you are breaking, because it's hard. For example, now if I think back, for example, 2 weeks back, what feature I shipped or like what my team shipped, like it's hard to remember without really going through the full details and so on, right? And if we are like really focusing on speed learning, and I think a lot of refactoring also need to happen. Right? And how do you refactor with confidence if you don't have test? You do something, you break. So that's become a minimum requirement, because refactoring or like changing something is a natural part of software product development. And if you don't have test, you'll really cry, because you can't confidently refactor your code. So why I like test is because I can change anything. I just save it. I know like, okay, if it's gonna break something else somewhere else or something, I get the instant feedback. So test should be the first citizen, or like what we call it, the word first level citizen in the software engineering, especially if you with AI, and then combine that with the security stuff, for example, with Snake and others, MCP agents and something hook that they have a good level of rule sets. At least like if you don't have that expertise in the team, use tools like Snake and others, and then use their rule sets and so on, and hook it to your project. It's no harm, right, in the end, but you will get really better results. And test, don't skip it.
Absolutely, I'm totally there with you. I know how important it is, and probably this is one of the things. Okay. When talking with you, so respect for that, for your engagement and attention to the test part. I'm saying this because maybe, well, major part of software engineers to whom I had a chance to speak with, most of them were, including myself, I also have software engineering experience. I guess there should happen a couple things when you could actually proceed with test-driven development, or we can also think about this as test first.
Yeah, test first.
So, for example, I used to work with designing new systems, and when you design the new system, it is sometimes hard to start with a test because you have to change, let me say, the API, right? So the solution, its shape. So it felt at that time as a little bit of overhead if you have to adapt test and then you have to adapt the design architectural part even without implementation. So we thought, okay, we would come to the more solid design. Once the design or API is there, then we would come to test. And this is probably and I heard rather less engineers who were jumping right away to TDD. We know a lot of cases probably when people said, well, our clients will just test it, so let's just drop tests at all. And so we also heard those mindsets. And now with AI, with this help, I guess this is a super benefit where pretty much every development team can, without excuses, implement tests. I guess this is...
Yeah, exactly. It's the mindset, right? So write test first or write test afterwards. It's okay because the whole thing is like, it's very like depends on your preference as well, depends on your code base, depends on your team, what kind of expertise do you have. For example, if you just introduce a test-driven development to a team where we really don't know, they will go like really crazy because it really doesn't make sense why I'm like really just writing a test even there is no code. So forget about TDD or something, but focused on like writing a maintainable code, right, that you can really maintain, which is like also secure enough that you know like what's going on, and write test after, it's also fine, but at least think about writing tests. So it's not, and like what happens is like when as a software engineers we compute or like we calculate in our minds, and also like in the past, right, so we had project managers and they just come to, oh, I need this in a week. And now like, okay, if I consider test, like now it's going to cost me like 3 weeks. And then I'd say, okay, let's just ship it. And then you ship like so much in 1 year, then okay, it's not going back. So try to at least write the decent amount of the test that you ship. So because you'll also get confidence on what you are shipping, and write test after first, doesn't matter. It depends on what you prefer, but don't skip that part. The problem I see with the AI tools is like AI tools doesn't give you a test without you explicitly saying that, okay, write me a test as well. Even like simple things, you have to tell it like, make it super secure, like, okay, the API's keys are protected, it's an environment file, nothing is exposed and so on. So these kind of things we expect that it understands. It has a knowledge, but like it don't have it's not also not like a fully like aware, like who really understand like what you're thinking in so many dimensions, right? So, and force it to like, or make it a habit that, okay, you know, like, okay, what exactly you are instructing and what you are getting, and write test first or after, doesn't matter, because in the end you have a working features that you can really like the next time you want to change, you can change with confidence, right? So that's my take.
Good point. Quality. Yeah. How you, in which order you implement your tests, it's up to you, but they should be there. There should be a guarantee of
exactly.
code quality. coming back to the team setup, we have senior engineers, we have junior engineers. For junior engineers, the last year it was a little bit challenging. We had some decline in terms of hiring junior software engineers. And I'm asking myself a question, what should happen so that we could hire more of junior software engineers? What kind of qualities maybe we expect, or why did it happen? We know let's say, before AI, when junior software engineers joined the team, they still could handle some smaller tasks, so that senior software engineers didn't have to do this. So this was kind of a rather longer term onboarding process with potentially bringing more value to the solution. And now I guess the narrative is that senior software engineers with the help of AI tools can also implement smaller features. That's why it is harder to find a suitable place for junior software engineers. And while saying this, I somehow realized, okay, good, we didn't hire junior software engineers, so who did their job? Okay, so this job was done. By whom? By senior engineers. Okay, interesting. So in general, what's your feeling? How we could onboard junior software engineers? Anything specific that we should create in terms of environment so that they could proceed faster or get maybe more autonomous in terms of mentoring, maybe from those AI tools? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, so first thing is like for sure. So I think there we really made bad decisions, especially like cutting that chain of like slowing down with hiring juniors. That's really, I think, gonna impact us in the long run, because seniors are also gonna move on, right? So nobody is like always going to be at the same role, same company. And also like I think there is like how we see seniors, like at least, for example, for the majority part of my software engineering before moving to tech leadership, was with the seniors I saw were more categorized as senior based on the years of experience, right? So they work 10 years and now they are more 10 years, but not because like they really are like senior in terms of the craft and so on. So I started my career in that direction, right? And as a juniors, it always then like kind of like at least you can join a company, you finish your university, and at least the pipeline was stable because there are some people coming, some people going, and then like okay, there was a natural progression. But then what happened now is like we thought that okay, we don't need juniors because I am paying like 300 a month to cloud code or something, some agents, and we thought that the seniors can take a little bit more, or like they can do a job, but it have a long-term consequence because there is a huge gap now in terms of new perspective. Software engineering is like evolving so fast, and only that senior, for example, see someone in the same company for 10 years, they always think the same way, because how do you bring that diverse perspective or like challenging perspective or new approaches, new processes, innovation, if you just like, because you have, and it's not the fault of senior because that's what you've seen yourself and that's what you were groomed on, right? So, but like you have like isolated in that thing, but like these mid-level engineers or juniors, they have seen different ways. They are like thinking differently. For us, when I started, for me, work was the most important thing. But now I can't expect the same thing from the graduate from university. Work is just a tool for them to live a life, right? So I can't, for me, like, okay, I was super happy working weekends, extra nights and so on. But like when I hired nowadays, like the new generation of engineers, you can't expect the same because the definition of work matters differently to them. So as a leaders also we have to evolve slightly and make that space for the juniors. And for me, how it works is usually like I am very fan of pair programming, so like or even like in some teams, like even in remote setup, like extreme programming, like mob programming or something. So you have like different flavors of people and then try to spend them at least like 2 days or like at least 20-30% of your week time. With the senior, you can rotate between different people, and then you can really learn quite much faster. And then with the tooling is very important, right? So if your onboarding process is weak, if you need like 2 weeks to ship your first, it could be simple change, for example, code to like it needs, like there are teams where like you need a week just to set up the whole projects, 10 different projects on your machine, and by the time if you ship your first commit, it takes 2 weeks, and that's a really bad onboarding. So what you need to do is like, okay, make everything as automated as possible so that they can talk about the product. In the past, now they used to go to the seniors, right? So if you have a questions on that product or something, look for some documentations or wiki that were hanging around. But now you can like, you have access to these tools like your senior or peer engineer, right? Like these AI tools, you can treat it as that one, but just don't let them like only with this, okay, you're junior, now you have access to code base, you can work with AI. Don't do that mistake. You still need to feel that human side, pair them with senior engineers, because software engineering is not just about code, right? That's where we fail, or we are failing. We thought it's just about producing code. No, it's more than code. It's you need to understand the domain, you need to understand the problem, you need to understand the value in the long run, right? And if we just give the AI to those junior engineers, they will produce code, and probably the code might work, but they're never gonna understand, okay, why they are doing it, what they are building it, who they are building it for, and the gap will get bigger and bigger. And those people who are already in the company, seniors or whatever we call it, who knows the business, who know the problems, who know the customers, their job is to now to offload, like for example, documentation. I don't need to explain you everything for this manual, like explaining the architecture of the code base or something, use AI tools. But now come to me, and then you pair that for like, okay, what about that domain specific knowledge or the problems, and that junior can really, like with the appropriate set of tools and processes, then you have the better results. So you have to think from like, not from code perspective, and really like make them a part of like the shipping teams, and pair with the seniors, and then I think you can have that balance of technical, non-technical, both sides of. But juniors, we need more juniors. We need more juniors than ever, in my understanding.
I'm totally there with you. And when thinking about this problem, I guess this is great that we have junior people coming to the companies, to the team, being available there on the market after university with fresh energy, wanting to try out these career paths. I guess the major mistake was done on the management side, when the decisions not to hire were taken, and I think it was caused by not flexible mindset of managers. We just said that software engineering is not just about coding. Yeah, we can take this phrase and put it somewhere in the big letters. We also have social aspects. We also have other areas where junior people could very well contribute. Okay, we said the original problem is that AI could work on smaller tasks. Good. So what could do a junior software engineer? Maybe they could do some research. Maybe in bigger organizations could afford being on the middle between those extremes of research and the new tools and using this. I guess it would be valuable to get some input from a motivated junior colleague who would say, hey, look, here we have a nice tool, let's use it for some other use case, let's integrate it somehow. So I see the value bringing also from that part. Maybe he would have less coding. If we have a look at the past, we engineering teams had to devote some mentoring resources, right? Now, maybe it could be partly automated, just partly. So this is also a different perspective on the things. So this kind of flexibility, I believe this is what is missing. And maybe some people just couldn't comprehend, or decision makers couldn't comprehend the how to embrace this
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the problem. But from
Yeah.
my perspective, nothing changed.
Yeah, definitely. It's always I think and as humans, I think as people, we are like, we handle or we tackle the changes differently, right? So I think there is definitely, it's a lot of management and the leadership fault as well, like how they wanted to make those decisions only from like looking from certain angles, and but it needed reset, right? So I'm with you. Like it doesn't matter whether they do because coding is I think the least worrying thing right now, right? So first thing is like how I used to code, like when I started in like 2008 9 versus now is completely different, and maybe I used to write better code back then, or but very slower. But I need to like watch 10 different videos, find books and so on to learn the domain driven design. Took many years, and so on. And now there is so much access of the resources, so the mentors, like having the right mentors, I think changes everything. You already, I think I like to touch base on this point. So what we are also lacking is this mentoring concept is like kind of becoming less and less popular. In the past, like to have a great mentor, like be it for anything, be it for software, be it for engineering managers, be it for any kind of leadership, it always like having that one right mentor changes. You can go from here to here so fast, right? And we hardly like talk about that. We think now just like, okay, you have the tools, you have all the documentation, just do it yourself. And we never invested in the foundation, and the foundation is the junior people. The more better we invest in terms of not just hiring, but the job also doesn't stop after hiring, right? How we grow them like in a year or two, and what kind of investments we make in getting the better results out of them also, I think has to be thought from management perspective, I think.
When thinking about this change in a little bit bigger perspective, I guess the problem that we are having right now, so just thinking about all the people who went to some kind of conference and then they write point number one, new AI tools, right? So this is our takeaway. Or the lectures, how to use particular AI tool. No, this is not what I want to hear about. I want to hear about how do you onboard junior people? How do you share the knowledge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you think? How do you interact with other people by using those tools? Yeah. Because we don't need, I believe, to go to the conference just to learn about new AI tool. No. We could watch YouTube video or just ask ChatGPT, whatever, and then sharing what kind of milestones people achieved with just AI coding tool. I think we get too little information out of it, and maybe that's why intrinsically we have less interest in this than in the use cases when more people were involved into one thing, and then we learned about new way of interacting with people. Because if I play with thoughts how it could develop further, so after onboarding a junior engineer, let's just imagine two organizations. One organization says, all right, cost effective, juniors no. Okay, so this one organization. Second one says, we think bigger, we hire juniors engineers. This second organization probably adapts onboarding process. Mm-hmm. Then it considers how to embrace the social impact. Mm-hmm. By the way, social impact, I guess, experienced colleagues, pretty much every one of them has came once evening at home and said to his spouse or to his friends, yeah, you know what, I thought I know nothing, but there was a junior colleague who came and I started answering questions, you know what, it seems like I know something, right? So this kind of an acknowledgement that also coming by admiring the expertise of domain experts, I guess it's also valuable. And now the other side, mentoring. All this doesn't take place here in this first organization. In the second, yes, mentoring. And then mentoring is also quite something that organizations might use for marketing or whatever. Because one organization could say, we built another prototype with AI tool, and the other would say, we did mentor other people who build more prototypes, or this kind of interactions. And those people could say, look, we learned how to use them. We juniors, now we interact at our level, which is also marketing. Well, when the market stabilizes, maybe, where would junior people go? And then I believe those companies who turn their back to juniors at some point would try to say, please come work for us. And then the question would be, okay, when was the last time when you hired junior? Or stuff
and
like
also,
this.
cost-wise also it would be super expensive for these companies because you are not having those senior people for forever, right? They will leave. People have families, people have different priorities in life, they find new opportunities, they move on. And now how you are going to like fill that gap, because the big problem is the losing the knowledge, right? So because if you keep on like really like, it's like in the cloud or in software we have like this single point of failure, right? So having this like dedicated or big chunk of seniors, they will go and then like you'll kind of really struggle to fill that gap and build that knowledge base again, and that would be like cost you like 10 times more than like having like a consistent pipeline. And that's how I think people need to think about more about the sustainable approach, right? So it's not just about, that's why I think like I like the teams where it's very balanced. You have different kind of people and the challenging each other in a good way and bringing new ideas and perspective, and that's also I think make the work fun. Otherwise I think if you have all the seniors, they prefer to work most probably on their own to see features. And one thing with the AI, I think tools, I think what I like to touch base is what I realize is I think I always like to work with people, right? Work with people as in like I already said I like extreme programming, like pair programming, mob programming, where like group of people. And now like I think that people think, okay, that AI tool is your peer, and hypothetically yes, so you can pair with AI. And I think engineers are now becoming more introverted and isolated with just like with you have a tool, you are there, and now like I think the communication part with other team members and to really like have that integrated team, I think will be slightly challenging because people started developing this comfortness with just working with the tool. I'm good. I know like what to build. I work with AI, but in the past, like you have like group of people working together, and then so you still need to build that balance in a team where that like it doesn't replace your communication and the team bonding and like how you operate and how you learn, how you share knowledge and so on, right? That's also the one big mistake I think people are doing now. Okay, you have a tool, you don't need any senior engineer, you have the best one, AI.
So the AI advice that we could give is technical part, it got advanced. Now the social part should catch up.
Yeah, it should catch up, and it should be actually like really well thought. Otherwise, I think there will be more problems.
More disbalance and less progress. By saying this, it feels like from time perspective, it was great talk.
Yeah, it was really
Sanjeev, super perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.